What is urban poverty? Urban poverty is a poverty that happens in urban areas. For example, such as developed areas in Malaysia like Kuala Lumpur and Shah Alam. These people are living in the state of poor even though they live in a rich area. According to Macmillan and MacDonald, writers of the book Urban Economics and Real Estate, they said that urban poverty can be described in two ways. One is an absolute standard based on a minimum amount of income needed to sustain a healthy and minimally comfortable life. Two is a relative standard that is set based on average the standard of living in a nation. In simple words, the wage that the person gains can barely sustain their own expenses, which means there's not much money left for them to buy their own desires, and they probably don't have enough money to save for future needs. How to measure poverty? When it comes to measuring poverty levels in Malaysia, the government currently uses two methods: the Poverty Line Income (PLI) and the Multidimensional Poverty Index (MPI). The Ministry of Economic Affairs recently said the PLI, which is used to measure absolute poverty, is based on a household's basic requirements to live healthily and actively. Malaysia currently uses a PLI level of 980 ringgit nationally and at a higher level of 1,020 ringgit for Sarawak, followed by 1,180 ringgit for Sabah. However, many countries have now recognized that it is not enough to measure poverty by looking at how much a household earns, and are now measuring other ways where one may experience poverty. So here is Malaysia's MPI model, which uses data collected by the Department of Statistics Malaysia on Malaysian households to measure poverty from four dimensions of health, education, standard of living, and income. Based on the MPI benchmarks used by Malaysia, the official findings in 2014 showed only 1.1% of total households nationwide were either multidimensionally poor or facing deprivations in multiple aspects of life. This poverty level under MPI fell further to only 0.86% of households nationwide in 2016.
Which SDG is related to poverty? Goal number 1. No poverty. In September 2015, the General Assembly adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, include 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, to transform the world, and poverty is the first goal that had been introduced. Focuses on creating a world with no poverty. It is comprised of 7 targets, 5 of which are substantive and 2 of which are means of implementation. This goal also aims to ensure social protection for the poor and vulnerable, increase access to basic services, and support people harmed by climate-related extreme events and other economic, social, and environmental shocks and disaster. So this goal also call for an end to poverty in all its forms everywhere.
The characteristic of urban poverty in Malaysia. The aspect that can lead to urban poverty for a country is the lack or absence of political power among residents. The locals do not have any capability to protect their ownership rights to land in city where they could legally build a place to live. Secondly, because of inadequate social security system. Social security system are very important because social security provide a base of income on which employees can set up to plan for their retirement. Social Security also provides social insurance to workers who become disabled. With Social Security, the lives of locals are more secure. The inadequate rule of law in the country is one of the characteristics of urban poverty in Malaysia. This is because laws protect individual rights and freedom. In Malaysia, law is very important to defend locals from other locals, from organisations and even from the government.
Urban vulnerable groups. Urban vulnerable is those who are vulnerable towards the rapid pace in urbanization. These groups are mostly to be affected due to negative effects of urbanization. Urban vulnerable groups are single parent, elderly, handicapped, youth, orang asli, minority of Sabah and Sarawak, people with low and moderate income, and more.
Difference between rural and urban poverty. The meaning of rural poverty is resident of non-urbanized area or non-urban cluster who earn below the income threshold, while for the urban poverty is resident of urbanized area 50,000 plus people or urban cluster 2,500 minus 500 people who earn below the income threshold. The general source for the rural poverty is recent economic downturn related to the Great Recession, while for the urban poverty is historical migration during the Industrial Revolution. Lastly, the primary causes for the rural poverty is unemployment, and the second one is lack of healthcare. Lastly, it was income inequality, while for the urban poverty is lack of educational opportunity, unemployment, prejudice and discrimination.
The factors of urban poverty in Malaysia. The element that can contribute to urban poverty is lack of employment because job seekers are growing at a faster pace than the number of available jobs, especially during the recession phase of the business cycle in Malaysia. Secondly, volatile and very low income. For example, in Malaysia, the price of goods and services keeps on rising, which can lead to the poor becoming poor, and it will benefit certain people in the society. It is difficult for poor people or lower income group to get their minimum needs. Lower level of education or skill is one of the causes of urban poverty because it is essential to have a higher education to compete with others for a better life. Next factor is the lack of basic facilities. Basic facilities is the basic standard of changes required and appropriate to allow people to use public land safely. Basic facilities can help locals to improve their life, such as schools that can allow them to gain knowledge and hospital to ensure their health.
Income disparity urban area in Malaysia. Income disparity has officially narrowed in Malaysia. Over 1 million households continue to live in a relative poverty. Hazana Research Institution released its latest report on the state of household in Malaysia. It pointed out that in 2016, the gap in real mean income between the T20 and the M40 and B40 had widened from 20 years ago during the Asian financial crisis. According to Hazana Research Institution, this is because the T20 household mean income level had started at a higher base between 1995 and 2060. The mean household income for the T20 rose by 70% to 16 ringgit Malaysia. In contrast, the B40 and the M40 mean income earning had doubled to just 2,000 ringgit and 6,000 ringgit respectively. Even though earning growth for the T20 has slowed compared with the growth for M40 and B40, the head start means the middle and the low income families will continue to left behind. Income inequality can hurt the economy in the long run by creating civil and social tension, discontentment, distress, and can undermine political system and create instability in the economy as well as in the society. For instance, in the school education, children in the lower segment of the socio-economic distribution perform disproportionately poor in the academic compared to the children who come from well-off background. Does urbanization affect poverty? Yes. When a massive growth in urban population, it will cause us a variety of issues for the municipal government, particularly in terms of delivering service and utilities, generating employment opportunities, and providing housing for city dwellers. It will lead to escalating economy and social costs, such as rent, transportation, job, and others. It also contributes to signify the problem such as inadequate amenities and shortage of housing which deteriorate the living standard of the urban population.
Effects of urban poverty. Urban diseconomies. For instance, environmental deterioration, pollution, diseases, changes in natural water cycles, and improper dumping of garbage. Next is escalate in social crime. The crime index ratio per 100,000 population in 2018 and 2019 shows the Federal Territory of Kuala Lumpur and Selangor as the states with the highest ratio of crime. High cost of living. Living costs and expenses are higher in urban areas. The prices of some essential items such as food, housing, and healthcare are quite expensive and might probably affect urban vulnerable groups.
Migration is the movement of population from one area to another. Some migrations are forced, voluntary, permanent and temporary, international and regional. The type of migration that we are principally interested in this unit is rural to urban migration, which is the movement of people from countryside to city areas. This type of migration happened in more economically developed countries from the 18th century onwards on a large scale and has gradually slowed down. In fact, in many MEDCs, the movement of people has reversed and the people are moving from urban areas back into the countryside as they search for the quiet life. However, in many less economically developed cities are experiencing massive rural to urban migration, mainly of young males into the major cities. The major reasons for this movement can be classified into push and pull factors. A push factor is something that can force or encourage people to move away from an area. Push factors can include famine, drought, flooding, a lack of employment opportunities, population growth, and overpopulation. A pull factor is one in which encourages people to move to an area. Pull factors include the chance of a better job, better access to education and services, a higher standard of living. Solutions for urban poverty. Courses, training, and community development. The Malaysian government has invested millions of ringgit to ensure that the poor, especially those who live in urban areas, have a specific set of survival skills. Skills programs and associated courses aim at diverse levels of society, including regular citizens, politicians, women, and children, are designed with particular goal and emphasis in mind. Re-examining the needs of urban poor. The government also needs to look at social preparation for the rural migrants to urban centers. The government should emulate Singapore in the way they organize HDB flats by helping the community deal with living in flats. For example, neighborliness, community living. The government should also control urban transportation costs to ensure cheaper costs for the urban poor. Improve public amenities to improve access to basic rights. Calls to start a small-scale project to help the urban poor, working with Residents Association and Jerit Jaringan Rakyat Tertindas among other NGOs who are looking after urban poor issues. Focus is on improving the physical services, as most urban poor are not considering human rights because that is not a priority. Improving job or employment opportunities. There is an urgent need to look at the opportunities for the urban poor to create employment or jobs for them and improve their income levels. It is important that our government allocates appropriate resources to these communities and the programs that they need so that every child, regardless of where they grow up, has at the very least access to equal opportunities.